There's this belief that people should not create unless they're inspired. This is an excuse to not make stuff.
I can't write today. Oh, whoopsie daisy. It's a writer's block day. No, you idiot. There's a problem with your story.
Like, starting a book is freaking easy. You could bang out 5 chapters, but like chapter 16 is a lot harder.
But I don't think that everybody understands what work is, and they don't understand what self-directed work is. They've never done anything that they didn't have to do. That's very different than, I've created a YouTube account, now what?
Hey, welcome to The Great Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber, and with me from across the ocean is Matthew Tabor.
Well, you could drive to it. You could just drive south. It would take a while.
That's true.
I'm in Santa Catarina, Brazil, which is south of Sao Paulo by quite a bit. Like 60-minute flight, whatever. So it's sort of like New York to Washington. It's about that kind of thing. I guess it would be like a 10-hour drive, but it's nice, very mild. You know what's weird though? The cabana that I'm in, the front door to it is a glass sliding door, like completely clear glass. There's no edge to the door. There's a lock there, but I mean, it's like a giant, completely see-through front door. I've never
no curtain to
encountered that.
No shade to pull. Just
there's a blackout curtain, and that's the strange thing. It's like I have 2 options. I can be completely and totally exposed to whomever is walking by, or I can make this a dungeon, and there's no in between. There's no like shear that you can pull, but it's nobody would walk by. You know, it's sort of like it's on a hill, and there are like little pathways between all the cabins and stuff. So like somebody isn't going to casually stroll by and peep in, but if they did, they would see they'd see podcasting and
full frontal nudity.
Yeah, for the people who are watching on video right now, they can confirm that I do have clothes on, Kevin.
Yeah. Well, it sounds to me like either way, this is a sex dungeon. It's either a voyeuristic type or a private type. And, you can keep that to yourself. We don't need to hear the details of that. But before we get into our topic, which is about creativity myths, shout out to season 3 of Smiling Friends just dropping. Yeah. The first episode was excellent and ended up including something that we talked about with Zach and Michael on the podcast years ago. And, my head basically exploded when there was a reference to something that they had discussed on the podcast, which was the Chris Chan's father thing.
You picked up on it when you watched it, like you recognized it.
Yeah.
On the show.
Oh, I mean, yeah. we laughed our asses off about it years ago. Of the Zach's in particular obsession with. Do you realize? Do you realize something?
So you make this clip. You cut the thing from the podcast and put it up, and it's yet another like. One of the most, the list of successful things that have come from this podcast, almost all have me laughing in the background and never speaking. I don't exist at all to do anything. I'm like the laugh track of the good things on the podcast.
Yeah, you are. Well, you provide a very good, hearty laugh track. Oh, you haven't seen it?
This is what's killing me. I still haven't seen it because when it came out, I was in Turkey, and they would have put me to death if I'd streamed Smiling Friends there.
Well, right.
Been hung in the public square.
Well, it's the kind of thing that, ahead of time, I saw some buzzing. I think we're at the point now with Smiling Friends where like the hipsters are coming out and being like, this is going to get bad now, like Rick and Morty did and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as far as I can tell from the first episode so far, the answer to that is resounding no. It is excellent. It's so funny.
I don't see I don't see those guys doing anything other than what they do
Yeah.
forever. Like they're not going to work in social justice angles. They're not going to grab on to any kind of message. You know what I mean? Like it's just not going to get goofy. And if it does, I mean, everybody can change. It's possible. We've seen even people who have been on this show. They're different people right now than when we talked to them. If we did a third episode with iDubbbz, for example, I think it would be quite different than the first time we talked to him. That's one good example of how it's just a different personality. All sorts of things can happen. So nothing is ever guaranteed. When we started this, I enjoyed talking to Kevin. He was a decent person. Now I know he's a monster.
Right.
250 episodes can change a man.
That's true.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Right.
But I don't see that with those guys. I just don't.
I don't either. I don't either. It's not a concern that I have. That's for sure. But you tweeted something last week, I think, that you and I talked about, and then you tweeted it publicly to just put it out there to the world about something actually that you've been harping on for a really long time, which is the first of our creativity myths, and that has to do with writing.
Oh,
and it is your hypothesis that writer's block is fake. This is not a real thing.
It's so beyond fake that, when I think of something that's fake, I think of things that are kind of like generally true that get simplified into something that isn't literally true. So like, oh, your mother loves you unconditionally. Well, look, you piss off your mom now and again. There are times when your mom wants to just bash your head in. I'm sure it doesn't happen very often. But look, we know that is not strictly true every single second of your life, right? But you round up and it's sort of like a white lie territory kind of thing. That's how I feel myths aren't, strictly true. With the writer's block thing, I think it's worse than that. I think it falls into crock of shit territory. I think it's dangerously, stupidly, verifiably false. It's not a white lie. It's not rounding up. It is dumb and destructive.
Well, I just pieced together. So we're going to have a couple of myths that we're going to discuss on this podcast. I just right now extracted sort of a through line, I think, for all of them, which is that these are things that people use as excuses not to finish a project. And I think writer's block is one of them. But I do want to say real quick that as someone who is working on a book, who is writing something, I have encountered what I think maybe people consider writer's block. I do not consider it writer's block, though. That's not, because when you think of the term writer's block, from the way I understand it, it's that you are sort of creatively, the tank is empty and you have no ideas. That's how I think of, I guess we should define what we think of the term writer's block. That's what I think of when I've ever heard that term utilized. I've thought it as being someone who just, their head is empty. They have no idea what to do next. They cannot come up with an idea at all. They're just running on empty. What has happened to me that I guess maybe other people consider writer's block, I would more accurately describe as story stumble, where I'm writing this story. When you're writing a novel, it's made up of 10,000 ideas and they all have to work together. Everything has to make sense. One idea has to play into the next idea. You have your promises and your payoffs and your foreshadowing, and you have all of this stuff that has to happen in order to make your story really work. And even though I have outlined and re-outlined and re-outlined several times during this process, once I get into the chapter, even though I'm like, okay, I'm going to start here and end here, it doesn't always work out. I get like a quarter of the way through it. And at that point, I'm like, where I thought this was going is going to break the story. It's not going to work. Like, this actually doesn't make sense for this to happen. And it's a little hard for me to talk about it in such generalities, but I hope that what I'm saying is coming across as making some semblance of sense, where I have a plan for what's going to happen in the story, and now all of a sudden I'm realizing that will not work, and now I don't know what to do. I don't know what will work because my plans have fallen through, and I'm like, crap, I need a brand new idea in order for the story to work, and I don't know what that idea is. And then I spend 2 weeks not writing anything because I don't know what to write. And that to me is not writer's block. I'm stumbling on the story. So I would consider that story stumble.
Yeah. So when I think of writer's block, and I think back to kind of what every time a teacher referenced it in school, or a kid was like, "Oh, I've got writer's block." Like, okay. Like, it was this almost randomly assigned paralysis that you were just like incapable of continuing, of writing anything. That's what I think of as writer's block, where it's like, and you see this in movies too a lot. I told you that I've been watching movies lately. Had a lot of plane time, watched the movies on the plane, including a couple rewatches. Did the annual rewatch of Star Wars A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, which it's fun to analyze those movies over and over. It's like the only movie that I enjoy doing that with, that series. I haven't on Return of the Jedi, really. But I like both of those because they're very different in how the stories go. And there's some good stuff, and some things that, only work because of that particular story, but whatever. Anyway, I've been watching movies. I mentioned that I'd watched both of the It movies. It, and I think it's It Chapter 2 is the name of the sequel. Mm-hmm. This writer's block thing pops up in TV and movies way too often. Okay. In It Chapter 2, one of the, one of the kids is an author as an adult. And he's meant to be, in the very beginning, he's meant to be writing, the final scene of something, or other that's being shot that night, and he still hasn't done it. Yeah. And it's him staring at the empty dock on his computer, where he's written like one word or something. And that's supposed to be what writer's block is. That you're like, oh, I'm frozen. I don't know what to do. I can't begin this. I can't continue this. And I don't think that has anything to do with some force of nature that pops up and just, freezes your ability to create something. I think the issue is an underlying one. There's always a problem. Like you talked about, story stumble? Is that what you used on?
Yeah, story stumble.
Yeah.
I'm stumbling on the story.
Happens.
I don't know how to fix. I can't write because I don't know what needs to happen in order for the story to work.
That doesn't have anything to do with actually writing. I mean, it does in terms of you got to think about what you're going to write, but that's a problem with your story. And sometimes it's a stumble and you can find a way to get over it. Other times you hit an unsolvable problem. We hit that not very many times, but more than once with Vsauce 2 topics, didn't we? I can't think of a specific one, but there's like, oh, this is a good video topic. Let's go. And then hit a point where it's like, no, this we got to throw this out. This is an unsolvable problem in terms of making a compelling video.
Yeah.
That was the end. Pulled the plug on that. Those two things happen. But when you can't just sit down and write, it's because you have you have something missing, you have something wrong, you have something where 2 + 2 = 3 and it can't. You're missing a detail when, in terms of videos, this happens all the time. You're writing a video and you realize, oh, I've got to do more research on this facet of it to continue the video. I don't know enough. There's something here that I've unlocked or that I didn't see was important until right now, and I simply don't have the information or the knowledge to proceed. That's not having it all and staring at the computer thinking like, I can't write today. Oh, whoopsie daisy. It's a writer's block day. Like, no, there's a flaw in what I was doing, and I have two options. I stare at a screen, or I do what I have to do to fix that flaw, to, right yourself after the stumble. Yes, you hit walls all the time. Well, sometimes it's a 1,000-foot high wall, and it doesn't make sense to scale it, and you're not going to do it successfully anyway. Most of the time, though, you climb the wall and get on with things. That's so different than like, oh, I've got writer's block. No, figure your thing out, or recognize that that you have a problem to figure out. That's a big thing that I don't think people really do. They think, oh, there's a problem with my flow and my muse and my creativity and this and that. No, you idiot. There's a problem with your story. There's a problem with your video. There's a problem with the email you're writing. It's not thought through enough. You're missing something you need to continue easily.
Right. So the second one is, and Jen actually in the chat, while you were talking about missing knowledge, mentioned that the another facet of writer's block could be lack of confidence or knowledge. And I think that, both of those things, it ultimately comes down to problem solving. You have some sort of problem that you have to figure out. And once you figure that out, then you're off to the races and you're writing again. And that just to go back to my story is exactly what happened. Like after 2 weeks of coming up with all these different sort of, if you think of it like I'm at a problem point, and now I'm imagining all these different branching paths that maybe lead me to where I need to go. And then it's like eliminating those branching paths one after another, thinking that's not going to work. 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 And eventually you find the one that will work. And then once you do, then you're writing again. And that's what, that has happened to me a couple of times with Sleep Warrior. The second thing, to go back to your mention of the muse, has to do with this idea that I've seen crop up a bunch of times, and it cropped up again recently, where there's this belief that people should not create unless they're inspired. Like creative people should wait for inspiration to create. They shouldn't try to force it. They shouldn't pretend that they're being creative when they're not in the right setting or the right mood, or the stars have not aligned so perfectly that, this beautiful art spews forth from the fountain of creativity. And it's like that again, I would love to categorize under the idea of like, this is an excuse to not make stuff. And it's nothing more than that.
No, and the idea that you have to wait for the stars to align, and they do sometimes.
They do sometimes. That is a thing. This is a thing. 100% it's a real thing. But to sit around, staring at the stars until Mars is exactly where you want it to be before you do anything is absurd.
Oh, it's dumb. It's so stupid. But when you do that and you finally, pull the trigger on the thing, it's easy. Well, until it isn't. And I mean, something of sufficient length. And Jen says confidence, knowledge, all these things play in to what we're saying. Anything of sufficient length or complexity, you will run past that initial clarity. You just will. If it's TikToks, then, you're probably right. You can do a 60-second thing with full clarity and never, kind of outkick your coverage on it. I know that everybody listening is a tremendous football fan, so they get that reference. But yeah, they never go beyond that initial point of clarity and confidence and knowledge and all that stuff. And you should be going beyond it. I mean, think about how lame any videos you'd ever done would have been if you stuck to what you knew and what you were confident with. First of all, they'd be 17 seconds long because that's like the extent of what you're 100% comfortable with, and where the expertise starts to run dry. Uh, and also they would just be boring. They would stink, absolutely stink.
Well, here's another really glaring problem with this idea that maybe people don't recognize, but this is 100% true, is that sometimes when you are in that flow state and you're really excited about an idea and, that muse is just singing to you, the thing that you're making sucks because you get,
Yep.
what would you say? You are like lost in the lust and the romance of this idea that you think is so great. And you're like on cloud nine and you're so excited about it and it's perfect and it's the funniest or the most insightful thing you've ever done. And then like 3 days later, when you're not high on the idea anymore, you look at it and you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just not nearly as good as you thought it was. Do you remember a couple years ago, there was this goofy story that I see it on Twitter referenced now and again about this woman who went to a conference and I guess met some guy and
Oh, I know exactly what the story you're talking about. Yes.
yeah, they talked and she fell for him so hard that she like initiated divorce with her husband despite them having, like 15-year-old kids or something. Like whatever. She just upended her life because she had this incredible connection with this guy she just met. And when she did it, the guy was like, "What are you talking about?" It was not at all mutual.
Yeah.
Um,
She abandoned
it
her
wasn't.
family.
Yeah, she abandoned her family. She was just so lost in the sauce on that. That's how, people talk like, oh, I trust my gut. I think with my gut. When you think with your gut, you literally have shit for brains biologically. That is the mechanism of what's happening. Yeah, and there's there there are times when things in your mind just coalesce at warp speed so fast and so perfectly and so accurately that no, you aren't thinking about them step by step and you're not figuring it out. They just happen, right? But that's your mind, working like a microprocessor. It just like there's stuff going on, like we talked about in the Daniel Kahneman book with thinking fast and slow, the video that involved that. Sometimes fast thought is remarkable stuff that happens, and it feels like inspiration. It feels like you're totally tricked into thinking it's something that it's not. Yeah. Jen says, "Trust my gut, the thing that routinely tries to kill me." Yeah, yeah. Most of the time, when you've got a gut feeling, it's like indigestion, IBS, Crohn's. It's something. You've eaten something that was slightly off. You shouldn't have eaten those clams last night.
Well, I like Conrad's post-nut clarity comment because that basically is the concept that I was trying to explain, that like, yeah, afterwards you have that post-nut clarity and you're like, that was not very good. And
Yeah.
you just like literally are high on your own creativity. And sometimes it's a miracle and it's great. And sometimes it's garbage. And to think that you can only create when you're high on your idea is just flat out wrong and bad advice. Like I guess that's the other thing I think that we should use as like a rationale for discussing this is a lot of this stuff is bad advice for people. Like they shouldn't be thinking this way. It's not useful. It's actually really destructive because
it's horrible.
It just gives you the wrong frame of mind for being someone who if you want to be someone who is finishing projects and creating good work, then you should not be following guidelines like only do it when you're nutting.
Yeah, yeah, and to go back to the writer's block thing. If you want to be somebody, and this goes beyond writing, let's say creative block, but the stuff that I do is writing. Kevin, you're enmeshed in writing and have been for some time. For us, it is actual writing, but it pretty much happens with all creative things. To go back to that, though, if you want to be good, if you want to be efficient, productive, whatever, you want the ball to keep rolling, which is better for you? To think, I've just been struck by a bolt of lightning, very unlucky, that has paralyzed my ability to continue right now? Or is it better to think, if I'm feeling stuck, there must be a problem. It might be a problem with me. It might be a problem with my story, with my video, whatever. Let me diagnose that the best that I can. And it's not always an exact science. You might think it's one thing and it turns out to be another, but you keep going until you crack it. Is it better to do that so that you can get in the habit of dealing with those problems when they come up? I hit the walls all the time now. I don't freak out because I've had it happen hundreds of times. I think, okay, immediately it's what's the hiccup here? What's going to break through? And then I do that. And that's why I can, I can do stuff day in and day out because I got better at that. Yes, it was hard when I was 14, and there's like a question on a test that isn't a great fit for the knowledge you currently have. Whatever. There's some writing prompt that's tough. This is, I've never been somebody who has done writing exercises and thought about it. I like people just doing stuff, right, instead of practicing things. But shout out to Ryan Kinder, who's been one of the most successful people on the internet when it comes to writing prompts. He's got a book on Amazon that has sold a lot that is just writing prompts. Dealing with those forces you to get past the stumble and the hurdle and the wall, because by default, when you get a writing prompt, you are not prepared to do it. You're not. That's the whole point of it, is that you get an idea and you're forced to write a page or 10 pages or whatever the task is, working through this idea. And it almost certainly will be difficult because you're not prepared for it and you're doing it on the spot. You can get that same experience just doing lots of projects and getting used to the the difficulty of it, right? But it's okay. You get comfortable with it. And the people who do the writing prompt exercises, by the time, they've done a ton of them, when you do hit a wall, it's like, okay, it's the millionth time you've hit a wall and you know how to get through it or over it. It's a skill that you absolutely have to have. Everybody creatively has to have this skill. So couching it in, I'm so unlucky. Fate has dealt me paralysis.
Fortuna's wheel, to quote Confederacy of Dunces, Fortuna's wheel has spun.
Yeah.
Your pyloric valve is open.
Yeah, and that's such a good example for anybody who's read even a chapter of Confederacy of Dunces. This is not a guy you want to be like. This is somebody who's not finishing their project, their perpetual whatever.
Right. Yeah.
It's exactly that. In a modern example, if somebody is in, what would you call the genre of Twitter that Dan Baltic is? How would you label this?
Well, what did esteemed publication Rolling Stone declare to be? Like alt-right press or something like that? I don't remember.
Yeah, which it's not. It's just it's sort of like, it is really hard to describe. It's like kind of counterculture-y, right? it makes fun of a lot of things that are important to other parts of humanity, right? It gores the odd sacred cow, and it has fun with it, and you know, it, his Twitter account is goofy. It's stupid shit, and it's funny, right? But he's got this short novel called Nutcracker, and the character in Nutcracker
This whole episode's coming back to nutting.
It is. Is that same type of Ignatius J. Riley in Dunces guy who is perpetually working on this project. You don't want to be like these people because they're failures and they're losers. If you had assigned your stumbles to a bad spin of Fortuna's wheel, Kevin, how would draft number 2 of Sleep Warrior be any better than draft number 1? It would be, you wouldn't have gotten insight to improve that draft.
I would have stopped thinking about it. I would have stopped working on it. And that's another kind of element to this idea, is that I think that it's really important to consider whatever it is that you're trying to work on as work. And if you want to see it through and finish it, it can be sort of a hobby that you do every now and then to decompress, and that's completely fine. But at the same time, like, if you do want to be someone who finishes projects, then you cannot just sit around and wait for that divine inspiration to happen, because you have to plug through it, because that's what work is. Like, who wants to go to work? Nobody wants to go to work. You don't sit down and think like, oh man, I'm so excited to work today, but you have to go. And if you want to finish things, then you have to finish them. And you should sit down and work on it when you don't want to, which is how we made hundreds of Vsauce 2 videos over the years. And if the two of us only sat down to work on those when we wanted to, we would have made like 7, which you do see with some YouTubers.
Yes, you do.
I mean, this is a thing. And people are like, oh, why does it take, so long? You upload once a year, twice a year, whatever it is, once every 3 years. Where's this so-and-so? What happened to so-and-so? It's like, well, maybe they are just working on a thing when they want to. But I think if they worked on it when they didn't want to, not only would they make a lot more, but there's no evidence, as far as I'm concerned, that the result would be diminished in any way. Like, the project would still probably be awesome, even if you were working on it day in and day out against your will, so to speak.
Yeah. You're talking about this being work, and I'm trying not to paint with too broad a brush here, but I don't think that everybody understands what work is, and they don't understand what self-directed work is, because it's always a response to something. They've never done anything that they didn't really have to do, right? So all things academically, until you're really at pretty high level, like most graduate work is at this level. Some undergraduate is. You are doing something that somebody else has decided you should do. It isn't your idea. Even when you get to choose a topic, for example, it's still in a breadth and a format and a style that somebody else has decided, it should be done that way. That's very different than, I've created a YouTube account. Now what? You have to figure out everything in that scenario. Kevin, I want to write a novel. Now what? Like, this is not the same as executing something that, somebody else has created boundaries for already. Two things that are weird antidotes to this. And I'm trying to take dumps on younger people less than I have been in the last few years.
Of you. Yeah.
I'm trying to be better to them as a race of people, those under 30. But a lot of things, it's just not their fault at all, right? most people it takes a while, if it ever happens, to get to a point in your career where you are calling a lot of shots. You are making the boundaries. You are deciding what gets done. Almost everybody is doing work that has the playing field and the rules of the game set for them. That through no fault of their own. You can't rush that process, right? But as you get older, there's a set of stuff that you are forced to do things all the time that you didn't see coming. One of these things, Kevin, you'll enjoy this, is home ownership.
Mm.
If somebody has rented all their lives or, lived with somebody who has the ultimate responsibility for a property, when you're a kid, that's your parents. When something goes wrong, you call the building super, you call the landlord, you do whatever. You don't have to really do anything yourself. Kevin, if your toilet broke today, would you wait for inspiration to fix it?
No. I would try to fix it myself as quickly as possible and see how that goes.
Yeah.
And if that did not go well, then I'm calling a plumber at that point, which I then have to pay for, obviously.
That's right. And you've got to come up with a way to pay for that one way or another. You don't have an option on this stuff.
No.
You have to just do the thing, and inspiration doesn't count. The other class of things is like, even if you're not moving, like you recognize that the world is moving around you. And this is another homeownership type thing. You can't wait to mow the lawn until you're inspired to do it, because it keeps growing. It's that obvious. It's that simple. There's all this stuff that is happening, and you just don't get to choose how to deal with it. Your choice is to do it, kind of do it right, keep up with what you need to do, or not do it at all and deal with the consequences. That's the only choice there. But it takes a certain kind of life to encounter those types of things. Being a freelancer is so hard, especially for young people, because if you're not working, you're not making money. If you don't, you're not standing at a cash register with people walking through the store all day and getting paid by the hour. If you don't go chase a client and figure out a way to be useful to them at a price that you're both happy with, you don't make any money at all. The thing depends solely on you, and you can't wait until you're in the mood for it. You can't wait for inspiration. Very few things work that way. I do want to say, I'm putting a bookmark on this thought for us to return to. There's an element of the writer's block and the inspiration being, paused, all of this, that I'm extremely sympathetic with and that I do think is real. But first, I want us to squeeze every bit out of just how destructive it is to think that you have the option to hang around until conditions are perfect. You can't do this. You can't wait for advantageous conditions with anything. You can't wait to go to the gym until you're not sore. You can't start a diet when you just happen to be able to deal with a bit of hunger that day. No, you have to do the thing where it's not going to get done.
Yeah, it's very Yoda. There is no try.
Well, no, he's 900 years old. Imagine all the shit he had to do in 900 years. It's a constant, awful grind.
The only other thing on this topic that I would want to emphasize is, again, sort of going back to the fact that some of your best work will come out of working on a thing when you don't want to. And I think that's really important to recognize, is that just because you believe that it only happens when the optimal conditions have arisen, that doesn't make it true. And then sometimes when you're just sitting there thinking, look, I have a deadline, or you have a self-imposed deadline. I mean, that sort of self-activated creativity is really hard for people, really, really hard for people. And I have no idea how to give any sort of advice on how to become the type of person who is self-motivating enough to say, I'm going to work on this YouTube video. I'm going to edit this thing. I'm going to write. I'm going to practice my guitar. I'm going to do these things when I don't feel like it. I don't know how you can convince someone to be that way. I don't know whether or not it's possible.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people do it enough that they begin to enjoy the difficulty of it. Going back to like a lifting or working out kind of thing. For me, it's working outside, but there's a point at which you you like the soreness, even though you don't like the soreness. you know, you like hitting, you like hitting the walls. If I don't hit a wall on a thing, it's not going to be any good. Like I'm not pushing any kind of boundaries. I'm staying too safe on it in terms of what I'm comfortable with and what I know. It's really important. Like there have been a lot of videos that they always start, well, almost always start with something I know to a decent degree. But every single one, I know something solid about the topic. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to know how to treat the topic, right? I know enough to continue, basically. Um, uh, but every single time, there's the mix of unfortunate and also very fortunate uh, pothole that you hit, where it's like, oh, I've got to do something new and unfamiliar to me, and if I don't hit that, it's just not that good, right? I'm not reaching deep enough into the topic. I should be going into territory that for me is uncharted. If I don't, it's just, I don't want to say slop, but slop adjacent. I could write 1,000 slop adjacent videos that would be easy for me. I'd feel good writing about them because I know the stuff. I'm confident. It'd be good. But it wouldn't be a really good exploration of anything. It wouldn't put me in a better position to write a better video next time on a topic. No, you've got to go beyond. You do have to, you have to put yourself in a position to feel the soreness in some way. Kevin, you could go to the gym. You could set every machine to 11 pounds, blast through your workout successfully. You'd do a great job if everything was set at, 10 or 15 pounds. You wouldn't be sore. You wouldn't have gained anything at all from that other than burning a few calories. That's just not useful, right? And you have to kind of push it a bit, not to an insane degree, because that's its own problems, but you got to push it a bit and then enjoy how that wasn't that great. You have to enjoy that it was hard. And I do think that people can learn that skill where you reach a point of failure on a project and then push through in some way, or you can realize I am not equipped to do this right now. I'm going to pause this. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to go, do something else as I, read this book on whatever, or watch videos about this thing for 3 months, and then I'll revisit it.
That happened to me with Sleep Warrior years ago, is that I wrote a thing, 70,000 words, whatever it was, and it was not good. It's like, I worked very hard on it. I thought it was, it was something. I got something here. I sent it off to you. I sent it off to my brother. I sent it off to a couple other people. And the feedback was just kind of like, yeah, this is something, but this is not a book. And this is not something that, you should be publishing or talking to an agent about. Like, you need to kind of do what you're saying, which is you need to learn a lot more about this process than you currently know and try again.
In that case, it was the story is solid. The progression is solid. This is on lock. Now it needs to be bookified, right? It has to be teased out sentence by sentence in a way that conforms to, reading a novel in a stronger way. And so that was precisely it. You're like, oh, okay, I'm going to read a ton of novels. I'm going to read a ton of novels. And you did that, and you're like, oh, okay, now I have a better sense of how to do this, and picked it up and did that. That happens all the time. Most people, I don't think, have the patience for that. They don't, they say, oh, if it's not working, I must not be good at this. It's a dumb idea. I don't want to feel the frustration. I'm doing this because I thought it would be fun and I'd be good at it. They just, they can't cope with that reality. But you've got to get used to that. It's not any kind of personal flaw. Kevin, you're not bad as a creative because you hit that point. You're not bad as a writer because you hit that point. It simply was, read a bunch of different kinds of books and see how people do it differently, and then figure out how you want to implement that. That's it. That's it. So, and it was like this for me too, where when we started working together, I was not a capable writer in the medium that you worked in. I wasn't. And it was get used to how videos go.
Right.
It's like videos are not articles. They're not, written stories. Like it doesn't work the way all the other type of writing that I've done worked. And it was that simple. It was, you sent me a ton of stuff. You pointed out a million things over a couple years. And then I was more useful. At the beginning, I was useful for like injecting elements of knowledge in, but not making making a script for a video. It just was different. And then I figured out, reasonably well how to do that. I'm not bad at it. I don't stink. I'm not dumb. Like none of these things that it's easy to feel in that scenario are the truth. They aren't. It was just, I've got to get better at this thing. I've never played pickleball. I've barely even seen it played. I've seen like 3 clips on Twitter. If I played a match of pickleball, I would be disastrous. Does that mean I'm a horrible athlete? Does that mean I'm not physically capable of doing anything in this game? No, it would be stupid to think that. It's obvious that the problem is I need to learn how to play pickleball and practice some. 6 months from now, I'd probably be serviceable. Well,
Do you think part of this though is like a personality thing? Because like as far as I'm concerned, and I think as far as you're concerned, like I really like improving things. Like I actually do like that process. Like I like making something, getting feedback on it, thinking about it a lot, and saying how could this be better?
yeah,
And that is not something that all creative people share. A lot
no,
of creative people hate the idea of revisions or edits or going back and thinking about and fixing a thing, even the idea that it needs to be fixed. It's like, no, 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 no. This is my beautiful baby, the pearl in the clam that I, crapped out, and you should all adore it. And it's like, well, that
yeah.
you could polish the clam. Or you could polish
You
the
polish
clam,
the
but
plan.
you could polish the pearl. You could polish the whole damn thing if you just worked on it a little bit more, and it would be a lot better. And I think that is like some people have an allergic reaction to that process.
They do. There's an element of humility that too few people possess as well. And I deal with this frequently in outside work, where when you deal with people who are very talented, accomplished, tend to be very smart, knowledgeable people, they are not used to hitting something that they're not good at. It kind of doesn't occur to them that uh, being a smart person isn't enough, right? That they can be a smart person and not know how to do this other thing, that it doesn't automatically apply, So, look, if I never played racket sports to any degree, but imagine, I was good at bowling. Imagine if I thought how stupid it would be to think, well, I was good at bowling. Therefore, I am going to be amazing at pickleball straight away. No, that's idiotic, and it's obvious that it's idiotic. But this is what so many people think, that it's like, I don't need to be humble about this. I don't need to challenge, or have challenged the things that I'm doing, why I'm doing them, because I'm a really smart person. Therefore, it's going to be good. Like, no, you can be. I just talked about I was a good writer, but I wasn't a good writer at that specific type of writing. I write capably now. That doesn't mean that I can write a good romance novel. Like, no, I'm not going to crank out a good novel about, werewolves seducing women that sell so well on Amazon. It would take a fair bit of familiarity with the genre and practice at writing it to be even in the conversation. That kind of thing is obvious. But when it's applied to somebody's like own stuff, they really have blinders on. Something I wanted to say earlier with the inspiration being bad is the best antidote to that is somebody else to talk to. Oh my God. People pointing out that your idea is good instead of great, or could be good or great if it had X, Y, and Z, or this other thing is going to be a problem. All the stuff that you're blind to when you're in the throes of inspiration, having somebody who can point that out to you, where, for me, that is you and James, who edits with us. That covers the bases of like 95% of analyzing a project. And I throw ideas to both of you all the time. And one thing that I don't think of enough is other people's unwillingness to travel in ways that I am. So like, I don't care about a 30-hour travel day. I don't love it, but it's like, whatever. This is just, this is something you do. If I'm talking to James, and I was doing this today, where he's like, yeah, this is, getting there to shoot that is a grind. Talking to Ben, who's been involved with the podcast forever, in that same way, where it's like, yeah, maybe I've got a 12-day limit on being away from home. Or when you're not an incel and you've managed to find a wife or a girlfriend you enjoy, kids, that kind of thing. People don't want to be away from those people for long stretches, or they have to coordinate being away, with family and friends and loved ones and this and that. I have some really good ideas that with, in terms of logistics, they're still good ideas, but it's like, no, that shouldn't be the number one priority. Put it on the back burner. Maybe something eases the logistics, but that's just an example of something that doesn't always occur to me immediately. And then somebody else very helpfully tells me, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. You got to have those people, right? And it doesn't mean somebody's shooting down your stuff all the time. That's bad. But having, sounding board kind of thing is a great balance. It's a good counterbalance to.
Well, and I think that most people, well, I don't know. I don't know that most people, but it would be my assumption that most people, first of all, don't have this. They don't have a person who can give constructive, specific feedback in a way that isn't demeaning or insulting. I think that probably the majority of the feedback that they do receive is either from like sycophantic praise. Oh, this is the greatest thing ever, even if it's not, because they don't want to hurt their feelings. Or, hating and trolls. Like they're either discouraged by someone or they're overly praised and encouraged. And neither of those is really, really that helpful. It is nice to be encouraged. Like, don't get me wrong. It's very nice to be encouraged, but it's not that useful as far as improving something, because there's nothing to improve. If it's great and you're a genius and I love you and here's your participation trophy for doing whatever you did, then there's no place to go from there. And I think people probably have a hard time finding other people the way that you can talk to me and I could talk to you, or you could talk to James or whatever, that have this balance in the relationship where there's trust between the people, that, neither
Yeah.
one is trying to be deceptive or manipulative or callous
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that. But at the same time, will give honest feedback in a way that they think would be useful and helpful, and criticism that's constructive in a way that, oh, you can fix this. Have you thought about that? Or this part was kind of slow. Is there a way that you could speed this up? Or I was confused here. Maybe you should explain this better.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Like, not everybody can do that. Like, you really have to find someone who can, and it is hard. And Jen mentioned something else too that I thought was,
No, that's hard.
that I had thought about. It actually sort of relays into another thing that I had read about recently. So Jen mentions how when she was a younger writer, she never really got useful feedback because she was just at a higher level than the people that she was talking to. So they really couldn't help her. So, like, kind of, if you're surrounded by people that, you are thinking
Oh,
about the thing at a
yeah.
higher level than them, and they're not at your level, then it's
Yeah.
really hard to pull and tease anything useful out of them. Um, the other thing that I really wanted to mention has to do with, uh, I had read a thing recently. Now, I've never been in like a public writing group before. So this is just an anecdotal thing that I came across. It may or may not be true, but I came across this thing in regards to these public writing groups that you can join. They'll be at like a community center or a school or something like that. You sign up and then you all meet and you have your writing group. And I guess you read each other's chapter or something and provide feedback. Anyway, this was this.
So it's like a support group for writers,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Writers
It's like
Anonymous.
an AA meeting for
Yeah.
writers. Yeah.
But what this person was saying was that in their experience, those writing groups are filled with people who never finish a novel. They never finish what they write. And if you are a person in that group who manages to complete and publish, even self-publish, but finish your book, they resent you for it. Like, you are like an outcast, and they're unhappy with you because you actually completed your project, because they, uh, what was the quote that you used earlier? They like to think about being a
Oh,
writer
yeah.
rather than actually writing, or something like that.
Yeah. They don't want to write nearly as much as they want to be somebody who has written. So they want to be somebody who's written a book. But as you know, as you're living, writing a book takes forever and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's not very enjoyable to do it along the way.
It gets harder. The
Yeah.
longer you go into it, it gets harder because there's so many more dots and pieces to connect the further that you get in. Like, starting a book is freaking easy. Like, that's super
Yeah.
easy. You could bang out 5
Yep.
chapters about, a guy and his hot dog stand, no problem. But like chapter 16 is a lot harder.
Yep. And when you realize that the really good thing you've thought of to do in chapter 16 means that you have to completely alter chapter 3,
Yes.
you have to retcon stuff,
Yeah.
and like it gets progressively much more difficult. Like the connection between early material and later material is just, I people want to sit down and be brilliant, like mash their keyboard with their fists and have the Pulitzer on the way. And it does not work that way for most people. I can't even say most, because the number of people, and there have been some, like James Joyce was one of these people, where, I mean, I think that he wrote, I don't know if it was Finnegan's Wake or something similar, but he wrote it in like 8 days. He like blocked himself in a room and probably drank enough whiskey to float a battleship, and by the end he'd written a masterpiece. I don't think I think that Stephen King is like this too, where he can probably write something beginning to end and not have to do a tremendous amount of work on revising things like continuity and this and that, not like normal people. So, like, is it possible in the human race to do this? Yeah, it is. But no, not for us. Not for us. And it gets really awful, and progress gets slower and slower and slower. And sometimes you're so deep in the revision that you have made no actual progress at all. You can spend a day on something where you're fixing this or deleting that and adding something else. And at the end of the day, you have just as many chapters and as many words as you started with. That is really hard to bear unless your attitude is a fit. The personality is a fit. There's a reason why it's kind of a trope, but it's true. So many writers and creatives and YouTubers, as we know, are really not normal people. We've kind of mentioned this, but like Kevin, you mentioned earlier, you said something about, it was, with inspiration, like realizing that you should do something without having this like butterfly in your stomach feeling to do it. People who are somewhere on the spectrum tend to just do things. It's like, oh, I'm going to work on my, Penguin novel from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and then they'll just do it. That's a huge benefit to getting a creative project done, is not second guessing like that. Well, neurotypicals, they have, quite often something in the way. They need the inspiration. The concept of inspiration is stupid to an entire class of people in the world. It would not occur to them to even be inspired. And I know this because when we were talking about that tweet, when it came up, I was trying to think of when I have felt inspired to do something, and I can't come up with an example of inspiration. I just do things. I will think about what to do, and if it seems like it's worth doing, I will do it. In the last couple months, the podcast has been because I'm dead inside. Yeah, that kills inspiration too. I don't worry about the why of anything like that. So I know it people think this way because I do to a degree. Have you been inspired, Kevin? When have you been?
I do get inspired with my writing. Yeah, there are times where ideas come into my head that I have to go right away. So like if I think that I'm done for the day, eat dinner, sitting down, watching TV, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I just thought of something that is really important to add to this chapter. I'll be right back. And I'll go back to my office and I'll write that thing down because I'll forget it if I don't do it. And so that does happen. Yeah. Where you have that. That does happen to me where just my brain does a thing and I'm like, oh, I really like that thing. Let me write that down because I'll forget it. It does also happen all the time as I'm falling asleep. So when I'm falling asleep, I'm not looking at anything. There's no sounds, I'm not looking at a screen. So I can just focus on thinking, and I'll go through my scenes or a scene that I'm working on. I'll go through in my head. It's like I'm writing it in my brain. Like I'm writing the scene in my brain. And sometimes a sentence will pop into my brain and I'm like, oh, I really like that sentence. And I wait, I open my eyes, I grab my phone, I open my, my note, app, and I write the sentence in, I put my phone down and I go back to sleep and I go to sleep. So that sort of stuff does happen for sure.
Yeah. I talk about this. I have in recent episodes about the perpetual notes app that I've got. One, so one of the things is, how did this even come? I was thinking about how I was going through security at one of the airports, and it was chaos. It just, there's this guy who was like ripping off his t-shirt and screaming and he kept tapping his watch. I can't decipher anything with Portuguese because it's like, it sounds like half Italian and half Spanish put in a blender. And the result is that I know zero. I can't pull like a few words here and there and have a sense of what's going on. No, I'm totally clueless. So I had no idea what this guy was screaming about, but he was tapping his watch, so I assumed he was late. And he kept like, he was really mad that they were stopping him at the metal detector. And he never took off his belt. He took off his t-shirt and had it like up around his neck, his full like chest and stomach exposed, like flailing his arms and walking through the metal detector. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And they eventually just let him through. And I'm like, oh, this guy could have had a knife on him and they wouldn't have known. And I thought back to a time when I left a pocket knife in a bag and security didn't catch it. It was like 2002. It's a sailing knife, and I got it the very first time I went to a casino the day I turned 18. I won $40, and I went to one of the shops there and bought this knife, and it has a hook on it that is slightly curved. People who do boat things know this. It's called a fid, and a fid is it's curved and it comes to a point, and it's about as thick as your finger at the base and goes to a point, and you stick that in knots to pull them apart. Okay. Like it gets in the crevices of rope so that you can pull a knot apart. For some reason, when I started thinking about this knife after watching this guy screaming in Portuguese and ripping his shirt off, I was on the plane and I thought, it would be, you really could describe somebody as having a finger like a fid. And that is a beautifully balanced phrase in terms of syllables.
Oh yeah.
A finger like a fid. It's perfect. You've got to know what a fid is to get it. But I thought, I like that. So I popped it in the Notes app. Now, is it ever going to come up where there's an appropriate time to use that phrase? I don't know. But that's what you do. That's the extent of the inspiration. It's like, oh, I've thought of something of value. I'm going to pop that down and I will look at it at some point. And you don't know, I was inspired by this charmingly overweight guy freaking the absolute hell out at security in Sao Paulo.
Yeah. And there have been other times, where you just get inspired by a thing. I mean, look, I'm inspired by the Sleep Warrior story to the point where like I've dropped everything else and this is all I'm working on. So, I mean, this is a long tail inspiration thing, but it is, certainly under the umbrella of inspiration. We were talking about it earlier today, and, you were mentioning that the ROI on this project is grim. It's like 2 years for sure of my life to sell. I don't know how many books, but it probably won't be a lot. But the counterpoint to that for me is I have to do this. Like I can't not. Like this is a thing that I need to do or else I can't live with myself. And I don't know if that's a common feeling that creative people get. I have no idea. I don't have any sense of that. But that is something that happens to me and has always happened to me my entire life, essentially, is that if I have a thing that is in my brain, it tortures me until it's out. So I have to get it out.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to give someone advice on, being possessed by an idea, but that is certainly my experience.
That's not something that I've ever hit, but I know that other people have. It's a real thing. For me, I like obsessions that are sort of niche, right? And that can happen absolutely with anything. You can go down a rabbit hole on anything at all in the world. So I don't, relish that feeling of like, oh, I've got to do this obsession, because for me, there's another one 10 minutes from now. It's a matter of which one I choose to do. You know, I don't have any idea why I like furs so much, leather and furs. I don't know. There's no long-standing or deep-seated reason that I like furs. I bought 38 mink tails the other day because I like them, and it's going to be cool to me to go home and eventually do something with, the mink tails I bought in Turkey. Vizon is the name of minks there, Vizon. And I like that. It's like, oh, I can read about, the difference between, Turkish minks and, the ones in the whatever. I'll do that until there's something else to be obsessed with, you know. But this stuff is personality based, and that's why I want to go back to the bookmark that I popped in, because there is an element of all of this. There's an element of the writer's block, especially, that is totally true, and that is having the yips. I don't know if there's a better way, Kevin. I'm hoping you have a more accessible way to describe what the yips are for people who don't know it in a sports setting.
I can't think because it's such a specific thing. And I can think about it in multiple sports. I could think about it in football with place kickers. I can think about it with Chuck Knobloch, the second baseman for the Yankees,
right,
who could not throw to first base to save his life. Probably golf is rife with elements or examples of the yips, where for some reason there's a break between your brain and your body, and your body just will not do, or your brain will not do what you want. Your body won't do what your brain wants it to. I think that's what it is. And the best example, which no one except me and you know, is Chuck Knobloch, the second baseman for the Yankees. I don't know, 20 years ago or so. Is that
the Twins
sound right?
The White Sox and the Yankees.
When he was on the Yankees, okay, second base, for anyone who's completely unfamiliar with baseball, is the closest position to first on the diamond. And if, I mean, I guess maybe the pitcher's closer, but we'll just say, for argument's sake, of the infielders, second base is the closest to first. So if a ground ball is hit to second base, the second baseman does not have very far to throw to first to get the runner out. At some point, for some reason, Chuck Knobloch, who is like an all-star, extremely good baseball player, could no longer throw the ball to first base. He could not throw it to the first baseman's mitt. He could not make the play. He couldn't get anybody out because he just couldn't throw the ball, 25 feet into the first baseman's glove. He'd just sail it, or he'd just dirt it, or it would go anywhere except into the first baseman's catch radius to get the runner out. He just couldn't do it. And that was the yips.
Totally. That's the yips. Yeah, and I don't know where the word came from, but Conrad put a definition in that makes sense. It's a sudden, unexplained loss of ability to execute certain skills in experienced performers such as athletes. There's no explanation, right? And so the athletes, they see sports psychologists who try to help them through this, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes they never quite get over it. That was the famous example from our childhood. But there's a catcher as well who could not throw the ball back to the pitcher after a pitch all of a sudden. I've had the yips with two things, not physical. One of them, it's almost hard to verbalize because it's so stupid. For years, I would not order appetizers at a restaurant. I would not verbalize the order of appetizers.
Okay.
And I always asked the person, who I was with, to order the appetizers. I didn't have, some waitress drop a dozen hot wings on my face.
There was no appetizer
when I was
trauma.
a child. there was no trauma. There was nothing that led to it. There's no specific anxiety or trigger in ordering an appetizer. Ordering the meal is fine. But I mean, this makes no sense at all. In another, I've had days where I cannot write an email. I can't I can't write an email. I can't reply. I can't do it. I don't understand that at all. That makes no sense. You'd think, if you want to do this, like you're not at the computer for the day. No, no, no. Everything else at the desk was fine. It's just I could not like bring myself to write emails. I have no explanation for this. Just like the yips in sports, people get the yips, and people who write and do all creative things get the yips. It happens. It's real. It's not writer's block to me. It's a totally unexplained reason for not being able to do it. That's why you have to go through that. What's my problem here? What's wrong? When you've exhausted every single option, and maybe you've asked people and they have no answers, maybe you got the yips, and there's something in your life that is blocking this. I don't know what it was for Chuck Knobloch. I don't know. But people do get the yips. Maybe you just have stress and anxiety that manifests in this one weird way. It happens. It doesn't happen much. It doesn't happen to most people, whatever. But you can totally have the yips when you open up the computer to do something and you just can't do it. You can't do it. So knowing that something like that is happening versus like, I don't know how to write my character out of a jam. These are not the same problem. They're not. You know, I've gone deep on some writing projects that had fatal flaws. And, you know, there's one I did, I don't know, 25, 30,000 words. That's not, you know, thousands of pages, but it's probably like 60. So that's a lot of pages. And I hit a wall because the premise that I had would not work. And I didn't know it until I got to a point where it broke. And I thought about it for a while. I tried to deal with it. And I came to realize that my premise was fatally flawed and could not work as a story. You know, that's not the yips. That's an idea that that sucked. You know, Kep says in the chat, I ate 12 bowls of pasta and now I have a writer's block. It's hard to be an artist. Yeah, people discount their physical health as a cause of writer's block and creative difficulty. They sleep like shit. They eat even worse. And then they wonder why their brain moves like sludge. You know, if I want to say this to some people, like it's when I know them well enough to know how they live. And they're like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. I want to be like, well, have you thought of like sleeping more than 2 hours a night and then not having like 9 monsters the next day to get by and not eating, you know, Uber Eats and DoorDash for every meal, maybe rubbing a vegetable against your face once a month.
Just a zucchini on your forehead.
Yeah.
I want to clarify real quick, though, is because Kep was saying, isn't that real writer's block then? But you're saying that it's still not writer's block because it's the yips, which is a separate thing that can be applied to writing, but it also could be applied to throwing a baseball or kicking a field goal. Or I also do want to say that I was right about golf. There's someone threw in the chat that the term originated, or it's believed that it originally originated in golf.
Oh, well, I like Tommy Armour. You know, he was somebody from back in the day. I didn't realize that he had that he had a role in, you know, either naming it or blowing it up. Yeah, I mean, with golf, it's really interesting. And I saw this with bowling too, now that I'm thinking about it, because the execution of the whole thing depends on such precision and repetitive precision that being off in any way gets a very bad result. You know, total failure by being off in a small way or not being able to repeat a thing. So that makes perfect sense to me that with putting, which is like the surgery of sport. It's like probably the most difficult element of precision in popular sport that somebody could just yank and crank it and stink out of nowhere.
Or throwing a baseball. I mean, that's a very specific motion as well to get it to first base.
You've had to have had the yips, Kevin. You must have had the yips with something.
I can't think of anything specifically. Probably if I did and I don't remember, it's because I just blocked it out as a traumatic event.
It's usually insignificant stuff and it doesn't last very long, and you chalk it up to like, I was in a weird mood. Like you bypass that. It doesn't really stick. I remember my two elements of the yips because one, it lasted for years, and happened all the time. And the second one is because like there were times when I really needed to write emails. I need, for like to be a productive person in life. And that wasn't great. I wish it was like, oh, I've got the yips and can't get the mail today. I'll get it tomorrow. Like, no, they were, things that happen a lot or were significant. But this is the exception. You can't, here's the other thing. You can't get the yips unless you're doing something. The yips don't happen at the beginning. The yips happen in the middle of something down the line.
Right. Chuck Knobloch was in like year 9 of being a professional Major League Baseball player when he got the yips.
He'd probably played baseball 25 years and couldn't execute the simplest aspect of his role on the baseball field. I had a final thought about this, which was the important distillation of it, and I have no idea what that was.
Oh.
I have no idea. I got the yips.
You did get the yips. Well, to me, it's the... Oh, you remembered it?
I remembered it.
What is it?
Specifically with writing, here's a tip for anybody doing a project, but it's especially good with writing. When you are done for the day on whatever you're doing, you should stop at a point that isn't quite finished. You shouldn't go until, for example, you finish a chapter, amazing, close Google Docs and go to bed. That's okay. But it's better to leave a bit unfinished, because then when you sit down to do it again, you pick up the baton from yesterday on the thing you've already thought about and know how to do, and you spend 5, 10, 15, whatever minutes finishing that, and it basically gets you in the flow, and you tend to be able to keep going. I do this sometimes with physical projects where, depending on the project, there are times when I clean everything up and put it away when I'm done, or there are times when I deliberately don't finish. So when I start the next day, I, put the bow on that thing I was just doing and then slide into the next step. This has cut down the slow starts,
the ramp up. Yeah.
The ramp up. That has been one of the most useful things ever, is to not finish, you just like hit the ground running the next day. You don't have to just start a cold engine over and over and over again. So if you are somebody who has a slow start and because of that, you stall and you're staring at the screen and feel like you've got writer's block, try to leave a little bit unfinished. You finish it super easily the next day, and see if you slide into whatever's next a little bit easier.
All right. I will add on to this for what works for me. Okay. So either you're a Matt Tabor and you're happy leaving the rest to finish tomorrow, or you're a Kevin Lieber and what you do instead is you finish badly, knowing you'll fix it tomorrow. So it works for me to finish put a placeholder in that I know is not good, that allows me the satisfaction of feeling like I completed the thing for the day. And I'm like, okay, I did this, knowing, being 100% cognizant of the fact that it's crap and that tomorrow I'll fix it. So it's almost like
Yeah.
I end on a mistake knowing that I'll fix it tomorrow, but at least I end in a place where I feel like I've accomplished what I wanted for the day. And then I do the same thing that you're saying the next day, where I pick up where I left off and I'm fresh and I have a specific thing right away that I know that I'm going to fix. So it's really the same approach. It's just tweaked slightly.
Right. Right. You jump into it by, fixing this problem and editing and whatever, and that's the warm up. I like that. Yeah. I think anything like that can get stuff moving. And you finish writing the thing or you fix the thing, you're ready to go. And if you can't, do a little soul searching. Analyze how amazing and genius your idea is. Throw things out. Do something else. Have the humility to realize that you are capable of coming up with a bad idea, an idea that just didn't work and will never work. Just do these things.
Yeah. One last thing before we go, because I just thought of it on the topic of humility, is it's sort of counterintuitive to me to consider, I guess it's humility, but at the same time, I feel like it's sort of the opposite, where I just feel like the things that I do could always be better. And that's not being humble about it. It's almost being down on it in a way where it's like, what I'm doing is not good enough and I know it could be better. So I'm going to keep working and I want feedback and I want to talk to people and I want to understand where there's a gap or where, what can be improved. It's like almost being pessimistic about it, not humble about it. But is that the same? Is it humble? Is it humility? I don't know. This is my question.
This is really complex and should be something we talk about in the future,
Okay.
because you have to think two things simultaneously that both are true and also can't be true. You have to basically think that you're awesome and that you stink at the same time.
Yeah.
This is what it comes down to. You have to think that you are a super genius and you have to think that you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And you have to apply these at the right time. I know a lot of people who think both of these things and apply them both at exactly the wrong time all the time. But if you are all one or the other, where it's not balanced, the product isn't going to be good. So it's like, how do you develop a personality that's healthy while being, confident to the point of arrogance and also humble to the point of self-flagellation? Like you have to write something and think it's a pile of shit, yet at the same time it's like the definitive video on the topic on YouTube.
Right.
Like this is where the optimal result happens.
Right. People should pay me. People should give me money to purchase this thing, but at the same time, it is a steaming pile of garbage, and I need to fix it. Yeah, that is pretty weird.
Yeah, you waffle between, I am God's gift to humanity versus I should be thrown in jail for what I'm doing. And if you think about how many people have done great things by juggling those two, you'll begin to understand it. There are lots of famous people who have operated that way, and I mean like Napoleon is a good example where he was rigorous and difficult on himself, but also thought that he was the greatest military mind, not even just living. He was the greatest military and leadership mind that had ever been produced in nature. When he got that out of balance, by the way, he got in trouble. Things began to sour now and again. So that's something that we should talk about. It's also going to be a very difficult one to talk about because it is so strangely conceptual. Maybe we can find an example that we like, that we can talk about that specific person.
Okay.
I do think that comedians do this all the time, where they're like, nobody is going to laugh at me when I'm on stage, versus I'm the funniest guy in the room.
Right.
It's strange.
It is strange. All right. We had a great crowd today for this recording. Thank you to all of our patrons for hanging out with us in the Discord. If you want to join our Discord, it's free. Just hang out with us and you can be part of these recordings. Or if you want to just support the podcast and you become a patron at patreon.com/thecreateunknown. We will be back next week. And until then, see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week. And the recent support has been amazing. Sidpoke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and the Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. And thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Ferrycoon, Jen Maffasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Ryan Steer, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Videover. And a tremendous shout-out to our elite baby gang commanders. Atrocious Scuff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, and of course, Trev's dad. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer, editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it, and thanks to Main Gear for powering all our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.